Hello and welcome back to the Illicit Feminine Podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Marth, and today we are going deep once again into reclaiming our sexuality. We are talking about a topic very close to my heart. They all are, of course, but this one definitely when it comes to sexuality, and it's the mother wound and our erotic selves. I love the word erotic. There's something like illicit about it. I think we should use it so much more often than we do erotic. It sounds like scandalous, and I love it. I think we should all learn to be more in our erotic energy, in our erotic selves. Okay, so what exactly are we going to talk about with the mother wound and reclaiming our erotic selves? I finished up a 4-week group a couple weeks ago around healing the ancestral feminine. And it was really about looking at our wounds with our mothers, but our ancestral lineage, the feminine wound, the mother wound goes back generations. And so when we look at our relationship with our own sexuality and sensuality, it can't not go back. We carry the DNA from the women who walked before us, who journeyed before us, who had their own experiences, being them pleasurable, being traumatic. We carry those within ourselves as well as our own. So looking at our relationship with sexuality, we have to look at the bigger picture. It just can't be within us. But we begin with our own mother because our relationship with our mother absolutely shaped our sexuality, our relationship that we have and viewed ourselves sexually, and her relationship with her own sexuality, as well as her mother and her mother's sexuality. See the tangled web we weave? Like it's all caught up in that. So we need to begin to untangling when we're beginning to reclaim our own sexuality, our own autonomy over our bodies, understanding that our pleasure is ours and ours to learn. It's our responsibility to understand our bodies, what we love, what we don't, what turns us on, what doesn't. That begins within us. Oftentimes, when we have experienced fucked up dynamics with our mother, we don't know where we end and she begins. And that fucks with our sexuality. So we're going to start right now really looking at our mother's own relationship with herself. What did you see your mother as? Was she nurturing? Was she kind? Was she caring? Did her, and if it was your dad or your mom or however, whatever family dynamic you had, awesome, like just fit it in there. Was it loving? Was it healthy? Did it feel really good? Or was your mother up and down and all around? Was that a chaotic relationship? Was that a dysfunctional relationship? Love is so often equaled with sex, understandably, but it doesn't always have to be. And so the way our mother loves can also show up in our idea of what sex is, if that makes sense. If our mother was cold and distant, I'm going to guess she probably didn't have an amazing sexual relationship with herself, maybe, but that probably didn't get passed on to you being able to have open conversations about your own sexuality. So we can really begin to look at how our mother was, how she treated herself, how she was with our father figure, and then how that shaped us. If she was very cold and numb and like rigid and frigid and didn't necessarily embody her gorgeous sexuality and sensuality and love and pleasure and delight, it may not have been passed on to us. That's the feminine nature. That is the feminine side. And granted, remember, we all have a feminine side and a masculine side. So if you're like more comfortable in your masculine, awesome. I'm just talking right now about the feminine energy of sexuality. That's really what this is all about. There's absolutely a masculine side to our sexuality also, but we're really focusing on our feminine side. So if your mother didn't feel free in her own body, in her own pleasure, in her own relationship with herself and with other people, there's a good chance you don't feel that either. She may have been shaming around sexuality and sensuality. And again, this isn't about blaming our mothers. All of this is just information because whatever she was taught to her from someone else. And a lot of times our mothers didn't have the luxury of emotional exploration, of emotional growth, of all the different avenues that are available to us to expand, to grow, to learn, to heal. That wasn't always available to all of our mothers. Absolutely less available to our grandmothers and so on. So it's really up to us women today in 2025 to break any cycles that aren't serving us. There is absolutely no reason that any woman alive today shouldn't be enjoying her full sexual, sensual, feminine self. There's plenty of reasons, but they don't have to be limitations. Women today have opened doors, especially, let me say this, women in America, right? In this country of privilege for some, for many, we get the advantage. So we get to begin the healing. We get to stop the cycle, to change the narrative, to rewrite the story. We learn from our mothers a lot of times, not from words. Abraham Hicks says this so beautifully. Words don't teach, experience does. And you can switch that around the other way. Like, our mothers may not have said things directly to us, but there was an energy about it. Like, we got the memo pretty quick due to the energy that we may have felt from our mothers. So whether it was an acceptable energy around your femininity as you were growing up, like you as a little girl, or if you identify however you identify, please just mold this to your experience, to your dynamic. But as a little girl, did you touch yourself? Were you shamed for that? Did your mother talk to you about masturbation? That is a normal part. Did she teach you about your body? Did she give your vulva and your breasts different names so that it wasn't actually the scientific name for your body parts? That can be like a huge thing that parents do to make it less dirty or less shameful. My mom was a stickler for always using the proper body parts, which was hilarious to all my friends because that's not how they were raised. My mom was very open with me about sex from a very young age. And I had a book, Where Did You Come From? I think I've shared this before. And it was like this graphic children's book. It was made for children with these really cartoonishly naked people that would then have sex, and you could understand where babies came from. So I knew people had sex to make a baby and for them to come out. My mom was really straight with me about all that, to the point that I was almost uncomfortable in ways. But I'm really grateful because I think that she gave me a curiosity about sex, even though I had a very distorted view of sexuality up until the last 5 years. I always had a huge curiosity about it. It was like this bipolarness of disassociating and wanting to know more. Anyway, your sexuality as you're growing, as your body's changing, as you're getting your period, what was that about for your mom and you? How was that? I remember my kids were pretty young also when me and a girlfriend told we had our kids about sex for the first time, because I didn't want them hearing it from anyone else. And God knows what they can learn about on social media or whatever, the internet. And I remember my daughter saying to me last year that she had a kid in school whose parents, this would have been 6th grade, who still didn't know about sex and still didn't know about where babies came from. Observing. And yeah, I guess there's a little judgment. No, it's not judgment. It's actually love, because I think that's so much more common than we understand, that there is this prevailing shame around sex, sexuality, your body, puberty changing, all these different things. Maybe we could have a whole podcast on that for growing boys, right? But not having open communication around this, it just perpetuates the belief that sexuality is shameful. And the thing is, they haven't been able to have a different experience. The parents aren't able to maybe look at their own sexual wounds or even know that there's anything wrong, right? That just might be normal. And what I want to do is denormalize that. We get to talk about this. We get to have conversations about it. Of course, at an age appropriate level, which is discretionary to the parents, with our kids. But I do believe that sexuality needs to be so much more a discussion of more commonplace in our culture. Okay, I'm getting off topic. So So we're sensing that pleasure can be dirty. Like we can grow up with that sense, right? Like you may touch yourself, you may get in trouble for it. You might think it's bad. You're going to hide and do it, right? So nobody knows. I think this comes up for women. Like one of the things, like we hide our pleasure because pleasure is, we shouldn't be having pleasure, right? Men like it to have pleasure all day, every day. Like women, like we have to hide our pleasure. We shouldn't be finding this pleasurable. So there's that like illicit piece to it. And so with our mothers, how she treated us as we were in our puberty ages, as we were growing and having questions and being curious, what was your experience of that? Was it healthy? Was it communicative? Was it informative? Was it not discussed? Was it not shamed? How did you learn about these things? Was it just like you figured it out as you were going? It all contributes to how we view our sexuality now. Okay, here's the next piece. If you were enmeshed with your mother, I started this at the beginning, you didn't know where you ended and she began. This was my experience. I was so enmeshed with my mom that like she thought as she was learning to embrace her sexuality over healing her own sexual abuse experiences, that then was her reason of exposing so much to me, probably at ages that weren't necessarily appropriate, even though she was very well-meaning. But like she couldn't discern between like her experience and me and what was maybe appropriate for me. In turn, I was her. So this is how like enmeshment works with our mothers, right? You're not a separate self. This is why becoming self-centered is my big signature program, because becoming a self after you have been enmeshed, it might seem like so obvious to some people. When you are enmeshed, you have no fucking idea like who you are. You just like your sense of self is based on another person. It's based on reactions. It's based on getting validation. It's based on approval, and you hide and you disassociate from your body because it's not safe to be in your body, because your body's feelings are like, burp, burp, this isn't right. Like your nervous system is going off the charts and you can't live that way. So you disassociate, you stop feeling in your body, you become numb to ways, and you really just are focused on keeping this person happy. Not great for your sexuality or sensuality, since this is where you need to feel, right? Sensuality is all about feeling, being able to let in, to allow, and to receive just our feminine energy, pleasure, delight, turn on. So when we have extreme enmeshment or even some enmeshment with our moms, it fucks with our idea of sexuality. It fucks with how we view ourselves. It fucks with how we view our bodies. And it diminishes any sort of an erotic self, right? Because our erotic self isn't obedient. Our erotic self knows pleasure. Our erotic self knows what it wants. And when it's getting tapped down, it's being avoided or it's being shamed, right? Like it goes into shadow, absolutely goes into shadow, because that's its place of safety. So when our identity was so wrapped up in approval, our identity, not just our identity, like our sense of safety and our sense of love, right, is so wrapped up in the approval of our mothers, in the pleasing of our mothers, of being everything our mothers needed, whether it's a caretaker, whether it is fixing her emotions, we're supposed to be fixing her. When everything is focused on our mothers, like we have very little sense of the self. And so our worth, our importance, like we don't feel it. We don't understand it. Sexuality is all about worth. Sexuality is loving ourselves, knowing we are worthy, knowing we are worthy of pleasure, knowing we are worthy of learning about our sensuality, of learning what turns us on. When you're enmeshed, that doesn't happen. There's not a sense of self, so you don't understand what worthiness is. Again, I could go on about this for a while. The main point is we leave our bodies to stay connected to our mothers because that's what is safe. And when we come out of that, so fully, when I was able to come out of that, I'm just sharing with you my own personal experience, was after my mother passed. And then I understood that I was a self, but like I didn't understand how to think fully, like separate from my mom. When I started learning about my own sexuality, when I started understanding that it wasn't about performing for somebody, it wasn't even about another person. Like I didn't even know my own body. Like I didn't even know so many different things. So it's when we start to begin to see that we're separate, right, from these enmeshed situations. So if your mother had mental illness, if your mother had personality disorder, if your mother just had trauma that she never dealt with, there was definitely a level of probably not feeling safe with her, that you were not safe, your emotions were not safe, and maybe you didn't feel physically safe. And when we don't feel safe, it's again not safe to be in our body. Like we go back into trauma response. So fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And we definitely don't want to stay in our body long enough to see if we can even feel pleasure. Pleasure isn't even necessarily a thing, right? Like maybe it's fleeting, but it's not our overall way of life. Joy, relaxation, calmness, receiving is really not our go-tos. Again, maybe for periods of time, but like you're living in reaction. You are waiting for whatever's going on around you to understand whether you are physically, emotionally, mentally safe or not. And so your pleasure is not what your body is looking for. Your body is looking for survival. So this is, again, pieces that we need to heal, pieces that we need to look at, pieces of ourselves that we get to reclaim, and we get to be our own safety for ourselves. And when we learn our bodies, again, forget about it even being sexually, but when we like develop an intimate relationship with our bodies and our needs and our feelings, that is a portal to fully embodying the feminine energy of who we are. Like this goddess essence. It changes everything. Feel that for a moment. Like being fully embodied in your feminine essence, in your full sexuality, in your full sensuality, knowing your turn on, knowing your desires, knowing your pleasure, knowing how to communicate that to another. Feel like that woman, because that woman is you. That woman is in you. Like that is who you were created to be. That is divine sacred sexuality. That is energy that is within you. And I guess that's really the crux of all this. We don't have to live in the avoiding, in the idea that sexuality is shameful, in the idea of our mother's shame or whatever her relationship was with sexuality and passed on to us, and like the lineage from our ancestral feminine. We get to do it different. We get to learn it differently. We get to choose differently. We get to practice differently, and we get to pass that on to our children differently. This is our time. This is the revolution in which we get to reclaim our sexuality in such a sacred way that we get to make a difference for the generations on. We get to have these conversations. We get to have happy, sexual, sensual lives. Like we get to have those. We get to step into that. So if you feel disconnected from your sexuality, if sexuality and sensuality feel foreign, feel shameful, feel so distant, and like you can't even fathom that being in that goddess energy, that full feminine embodiment of your sexuality and your sensuality, like you can't even see that as a possibility for you, I'm here to tell you it is there. There are tools, there are practices, there are beautiful ways to really step into this. I'm going to have a practice in my show notes so you can lean into that. It'll be my free gift to you. And I encourage you to please share this podcast with any other woman that you feel could use these words of enlightenment or encouragement. You get to reclaim your body. You get to reclaim your sacred sexuality. You get to reclaim your femininity. You get to rewrite your story. You get to step out of your wounds. You get to release that energy. You get to be in your turn on, and you get to be in your truth. Thank you so much for listening to the Illicit Feminine Podcast. And remember, nothing sacred is silenced. It is always brought into the light, even though we really do love the shadows. That's where all our gold is and where all our growth happens. Okay, take care. I'll see you next time.